Do you see a red button in your top left corner?
I do now.
It says recording right now. Yeah.
It wasn't recording.
I was going to ask you earlier too.
Oh man. Okay.
That's all right. At least we didn't get the whole way through. Okay. So son of a bitch.
It's all right. Maybe I'll say it better the second time.
Okay.
Dude, thanks for bearing with us, man.
Right.
All right. Let me just start this over. I'll do this intro quick and we're going to get into it. All right. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
And we have a gentleman by the name of Aaron Clark. Aaron, how are you, sir?
What's up, guys?
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use. And thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. Right, boys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so here we go. Aaron is somebody that Ben connected with via Instagram. I'll let Ben share that story. And comes to me and says, hey, I got this. You know, he's total, nerding out at this point. I got, Aaron Clark. I'm like, no, I have no idea. And no, I take no offense to that. I'm just not in the bodybuilding world at all. And he's like, oh, he's IFBB pro, struggled with addiction. And I messaged him and he sounds like he's willing to come on the show. I said, okay, sounds good. And so we set it up. And Aaron, appreciate you taking the time out, man, to come on and share your story. Ben, obviously this is your space, your world. You know that both of you know this area obviously a lot better than I do. So I'll interject whenever I can. But Ben, why don't you just give us a little brief introduction on how this all came about?
Yeah, just quick little snapshot. I'm going through Instagram and my algorithm is all bodybuilding usually. A couple other things sprinkled in there, maybe some gun channels, but some recovery stuff. But I came across Aaron's Instagram and he has these videos where he has this whiteboard and he does these animations, and just the way he's an animated person, the way he does these videos, I'm like captivated by your voice, to be honest with you. Just the way that the little pauses and then I don't know, man, something about it. I watched the whole thing, and I don't watch many Instagram videos beginning to end, but it's all bodybuilding content, and I get sucked into it. But yeah, one day I was laughing at one of them pretty hard. I'm like, I got to share this on my story. And when I shared it, Aaron gave it a little heart, and I'm like, all right, man. I was like all celebrating, and I took that opportunity and messaged him. And, part of it is that because of the bodybuilding world, for our regular listeners, they know I have a coach, do all that stuff. But I'm listening to Aaron's, I'm like putting puzzle pieces together, if you will, through his Instagram. I've seen other bodybuilding channels on YouTube where he's interviewed, and that he'll sprinkle in a little like opiate addiction here, and then like on Instagram mention Kratom. And as I'm like kind of piecing it together, I don't know that you've ever fully gone onto any interview and like completely talked about this stuff. Maybe you have, I don't know, but
bits and pieces.
Bits and pieces.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I reached out, I could just kind of tell that Aaron had some experience, and there's a couple topics that are definitely going to come up where I'd love to hear his insight. A couple of those being like in the synthetic opioid world, some of his take on Kratom. I know there's some stuff about eating disorder that we can discuss, stuff along those lines. So, our podcast, we encompass, when we're dealing with substance abuse, there's always comorbidities, and we're dealing with everything from mental health to eating disorders to substance abuse. It's all, one big pot of spaghetti. So, yeah, with that being said, I'll let you take it from there. If you just want to tell us a little bit about, your childhood, what it was like coming up, how you got to where you're at.
So, yeah, I grew up in a large family, a family of 5. And I want to make it clear that, I talk about my problems, that my parents are very loving, and they were always there for me, very supportive. And I still have an amazing relationship with him now. So, you know, a lot of people have these kinds of stories, and it stems from an absence, right? But for me, that's certainly not the case. But I'm the oldest of 5 children. I was homeschooled until high school, and I had a strict religious upbringing, and I think that left in me this feeling, you know, I had this kind of barrier between myself and the other kids my age, because I didn't have TV, I didn't see movies, I didn't have the things to talk about that they would, you know, kind of have some sort of, you know, connections with. And so I think from a teenager, I developed this kind of mindset that I had to really prove myself or earn other people's attention, or their I don't know what word to use, approval. Yeah, approval seeking, affirmation. Yeah, and so, you know, that's different forms. But I think that ended up factoring into eating disorders for me as a teenager. Just feeling really insecure, and it's probably just that thing when you're young and you're like, why can I not make friends? You know, and you think, well, maybe I just have to be better, than I'm not good enough. You know, and I don't really know, like, I'm 35 now, so it's like, but I know that I had a lot of frustration to connect, and um, a lot of body image issues that I was paranoid of being fat, just paranoid. And, you know, all the eating disorders, you know, it was a little bit of this, a little bit of everything. And so when I realized that was kind of, that demon was stronger than me, and I couldn't fight it directly. So I was like, well, you know, if you can't beat your demons, at least try to play on their team, right? So I started bodybuilding, and I started bodybuilding definitely not with the intention of going on stage, because I remember a guy at the gym that I went to, he came up to me, he's like, oh, you've got great genetics, you should compete. And I was like, ugh. I was like, that's some weird, like, I gave him some like real kind of, you know, teenage boy homophobic kind of answer. And he was like, well, I was in the USA's, you know, and I was like, oh, sorry, you know. But
that's the way that Tom teases me now. He's like, you can go
yeah.
prance around in your Speedo. He's still
Well, it is what it is. I mean, absolutely. But as a teenage boy, yeah, that's how I viewed it. And so I wasn't interested in that, but I got sucked into just the practice of it, right? And because I kind of had a disorder, I was good at it, because it wasn't like, oh, this is really hard, I want to go eat, you know, cookies. Like, that was already how I was living. So it was an easy just shift into that. And so, yeah, I remember in high school, I didn't want a cell phone, because I was like, that's my workout time. I don't want to see anybody. I was like, I'm straight to the gym. That's it. I didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't, you know, like, not about any of that in high school, and not about any of that in college. So then I did teenage national, I got convinced to compete. So they showed me pictures of people, and I looked at the pictures and I was like, you know, I think I could beat those guys. So the idea of beating the others made me swallow my pride and decide that I wanted to be a winner. So I did teenage nationals, and, you know, when I look back, I had no idea what I was doing. I trained really hard, but I was dieting on protein bars, and I remember boiling my chicken and eating boiled chicken with salt-free peanut butter on it, like thinking I was going to get really dry, you know? And
That's what Ben eats now.
yeah, it's cool. It's great. I looked pretty good, but I didn't have a tan, because I I didn't know. So I went to a tanning salon and I was like, what's the darkest spray tan you have? And they were like, oh, this one. People complain that it's too dark all the time. And I was like, well, that's exactly what I need. Give me that one. And they sprayed me. And I remember looking and I was like, oh, I don't know, lady. Like, this isn't going to cut. She's like, oh, sweetheart, don't worry. It'll get darker. And I was like, okay. And, and for the next 12 hours, I'm looking at it like, this is not good. Because I was super pale at that, and I looked like I spent an hour in the sun, maybe, it was a faint hint of orange. And I'm not going to get too bogged down in the details, but I ended up getting second place despite looking like a ghost. I remember, Dave Palumbo?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I went on stage, and when I got off stage, Dave ran up to me and he's like, what the hell is wrong with you? He's like, you're going to win the whole show. It's like, what's wrong with you? Like, what are you doing up there? Like, I was pale. And the guy wouldn't sell me a tan. He was afraid he was going to run out. And after pre-judging, he came up to me and he said, oh, bro, I had no idea you looked that good or else I would have sprayed you, which is crazy to tell some 19-year-old, But after that, I tore my pec, got super depressed and was like, I'm done with all this. Forget it. And this was really like an eye-opening period because it seemed like the eating disorders and everything was like something of the past. But as soon as I let go of bodybuilding, those came back and swallowed me up again. And I was really struggling, really depressed. And I was like, damn, I guess I got to do it again. Like, that was the only thing keeping me alive was bodybuilding. And so I was like, all right. So, I kind of rehabbed the pack and came back. And so that's all between the ages of 20 and 22. And at 22, I came back as, since we're talking about drugs, I started using steroids when I was 21. So I wasn't using steroids when I competed as a teen. So when I was around 21, and so at 22, I decided to do a show again, see what if it panned out well, because people had really blown my head up after Teenage Nationals with like, oh, you have such great potential. You're going to be so. So I do Maryland State, East Coast Classic, and I just won the heavyweights and the overall. And so I was like, oh, cool. So I won that. And, and usually in bodybuilding, you have to play the political game. People will tell you, you've got to do junior USAs first, and they'll see you there. And then you do junior nationals, and they'll look at you there. And then they're thinking about you. And then you're going to do nationals, and then you're going to do USAs the next year. And it's this long, like, carousel that you have to ride to try to get a pro card. And I was broke, and I was like, I'm just going to do USAs the next year. So I did USAs, and I won the heavyweights and the overall. I was the smallest guy. I think, I don't know if you're familiar with the weight classes. Yeah. So I was 203 as a heavyweight. So I remember weighing in, and they were like, you want to go down, right? And I was like, nope, I'm going to stay right here. And I won. So, that was really, I guess you could say, like almost like a, I don't want to say dream come true, but it was like, wow, like this happened. Like, I can't believe it. And I tell people that really, it's wildly anticlimactic when something like that happens to you in life, because it's like not supposed to be able to happen, but you work really hard and boom, it happens. And you're like, I think at that time I was like, wow, my life is, I've changed my life. Like, everything's going to be great now. And I remember going home and a friend picking me up in his car that was out of gas and just being like, nothing's different. Like, nothing's changed. And no supplement companies reached out to me. They told me, I remember asking, they told me, oh, you're not tall enough. You're not good looking enough. Sorry. And it was just a constant thing. because before they told me I had to, oh, you got to do a national level, or you got to. So then I went and won all of it, and then they're like, like maybe not. So no, I was really discouraged, but I was kind of committed at that point. So, and like I was saying before, so around, I would say probably around when I was 21, 22 is when I started smoking weed a lot. And it kind of came hand in hand with the anabolics. And this is something I like to tell people all the time. When you start taking anabolics, which, it's not for everyone, but, that's your decision. If you're taking anabolics, your lines become blurred so easily, because as soon as you're taking one thing to look a certain way, and then it's making you feel like this, it's so easy to justify taking this. Oh, I can't sleep now, so I'll take this to sleep, or I can't eat now, so I need to do this, or there's all this. It can just be an unending, cycle. And, I was young, and if it ends at weed, okay, but of course it usually doesn't. So for me, I started smoking weed pretty heavily. It kind of grew and grew after that point. Be to go to sleep at first, or because I struggled with my appetite. Then I would want to smoke before every workout. So I did the New York Pro the following year. That's 2013. And I had no sponsors or anything, so I'm just kind of riding this, spending my own money to try to do this thing. And I got 4th place there, which is really good for your first pro show. And everyone likes to tell you that, like, oh, it's so good for your first time. And
the New York Pro, for people that don't know, that's a big deal.
It's a big
show.
I was salty at the time, though, because I was like 4th. Like when you're trying to win and people tell you, oh, 4th is really good for your first time, like you want to punch them in the face. But yeah, I mean, it was good, and I looked really good. And I remember, I won't say the name, but the magazine came and they're like, oh, you're so, you're going to be amazing. We're going to give you a contract. And I was like, oh, amazing. Like what I've been waiting for. And I remember when they sent me the forms, the documents, it was $750 a month. That was it. So I was like, oh, that doesn't change much, but that was that. So that was all I got from there. And I was just, I was like, damn, this is crazy. Cause I've had this crazy come up, like, cause when I turned pro, I was the youngest pro in the world for a couple months until Dallas McCarver, who I'm sure you've heard of him, he turned pro like a month or two after, and he was younger than me. But it's like no one cared. And I was like, damn, this is crazy. Like nothing was coming back to me from pouring myself into it. And so 2013, at the end of 2013, I get offered this big contract. I say big, I think, it ended up being like, I would pay me like $2,000 a month or something, like it was better than the other one. And it had all these big names attached to it. So I was like, oh, this is great. And so I signed this contract in 2013. And so I go into 2014, I get an invite to do the Arnold, which was huge for me. That was actually the first 212 Arnold. And I got 3rd place there behind Flex Lewis and David Henry. So that was a huge win for me there. I was really happy with that. And so, once again, I was kind of grouped in that top, 5 at the time, right, of that class. And so after I got off stage for that, they were like, well, you got to do New York. You'll win New York. You're going to win New York Pro. And I was like, ooh, I don't know. Like that's, whenever people put that on you like that, they're like, well, you're going to win. You're going to win. Everyone's so good at these shows. And so I do New York and I won the New York Pro. 2014, 212 New York Pro. And it was just like, this is crazy. You know, like, again, everything was going like so good. And then after that, the bottom just fell out of my whole life. So after New York, the company who I was with, their checks started bouncing when they would send them me. And I would be like, you know, or they just wouldn't pay. And they'd be like, sorry, like next week we'll send it, you know. And I was struggling, just trying to compete, living check to check, really. So like, it was bad for me when that happened. And had been dating the same girl since I started competing again. So when I did started dating her before I competed when I was 22. So I've been dating her all the way up to this point. And so after the New York Pro, the company just kind of, the bottom fell out of the company. They stopped paying me. Then, and this is all because I'm doing the Olympia. So this is between May and September. So the company just, it's gone pretty much. That girlfriend was like, I don't love you anymore. I'm sorry. It's gone. And what else? It was just everything fell apart. And it was right before the biggest, like the Olympia, you know, which was like everything was leading up to that.
So, for any listeners that might not know, the Olympia is literally the Super Bowl of bodybuilding. Like, there's no stage over that.
It's the end game, right? Like if you make it to the Olympia, there's no higher, right? So I was just like rattled, you know, struggling and being like, you gotta just keep it together, you know, because you got just a couple months, and this could really change things for you. So someone helped me get there because the company obviously didn't pay for my ticket. I go compete, and in prejudging, I looked like I was in 4th place. And then in finals, I remember coming back and I got announced in 6th. And I remember just being crushed, which is good. I mean, 6th at the Olympia is crazy. But for me at the time, like I knew that wasn't good enough to really like change the trajectory for me. And yeah, I was devastated. And I'll always wonder, and I mean, this is all just because the company, they were a title sponsor of the Olympia, and their name was on the posters, and they didn't pay it, obviously. And so it always was in the back of my head, like, I wonder if I would have placed 5th or 4th, you know, but like, you know, you never know. It's those little things.
Mm-hmm. Politics.
Of course. I mean, it's to make money, right? So I do that show. I come home. I get evicted. I had a ring for that girl. I sold the ring. And I remember I moved into my parents' basement with my trophies, and I was just like looking at them like, damn, like it's crazy. You know, you just felt like you got chewed up and spit out because you did, you know, you won, like you did all this stuff and you won, you did good, but it didn't matter. Like, it didn't come back to you. And I was really depressed. And I think that's 2014. I think that's when I found Kratom a little bit. And I was smoking a lot of weed at that time. And I mean, like, it wasn't good, but to be honest, I think it probably kept me from doing anything harmful to myself. Like, I was really low, you know, I was really crushed.
I talk about that in my story, where I'll speak for myself. You know, drugs and alcohol, had they not been there, what would I have done to myself?
Right.
Like in high school, I had suicidal ideation, stuff along those lines. And, you know, if I didn't get my fix, I may have followed through on that, you know? So there's a point in time where drugs and alcohol, I'll give credit to saving my life.
Right. It's like a bridge to the next part, maybe, I guess. But so yeah, I'm just kind of lost. Like, and that's when the company reached out to me from Florida, And all the contract offers I was getting were not good. Like they were like real, yeah, they were not good. And so a company reached out to me from Florida, offered me a contract. It was okay. It was decent, but they offered me a job as well. And so I just up and moved to South Florida. And, in hindsight, I don't really know if that was a good idea because I was just so just discombobulated from my life and like to just go alone somewhere. I think it could have turned out really good, but it didn't because like I just didn't have my feet on the ground. And
Where were you living before?
so I was living in Northern Virginia at that time.
Is that pretty rural?
No, it's like 20 minutes from DC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's very overcrowded. Yeah.
I was gonna say moving to Boca area, right, in Florida.
Yeah.
Where you went to, yeah.
Let me ask a question real quick, just out of curiosity. The contracts and stuff, like what this isn't my world. So what, like, you get a contract, what do you do like for these contracts? Like, are they you have to like wear their gear or use their products? Because social media in 2013 wasn't even like, I mean,
Right.
it was there, but it wasn't a huge thing. So like, what did you have to do for those?
A little bit of all the above. When you went to competitions, you had to wear the stuff and you had to make some posts. But like, yeah, of course, like I had Instagram, but it wasn't what it is today.
Yeah.
And I will say, and I'll speak more on this in a little bit, like those contracts, like really, idle hands are the devil's plaything, right? And so like when I had nothing, I know where I needed to be, and I was just getting a check to like look jacked and work out, like I would just sit at home and get fucked up. You know what I mean? Like because I could, right? I didn't have to be somewhere. And people talk to me like, oh, that must be nice. I'm like, no, that was the worst time of my life. Like when I had no accountability to be anywhere. There was no appointments. I was just like, just be jacked, like it was really, maybe it works out really well for some people, but not for me. I just was destroying.
I don't think it, I think from an overarching understanding of that, Ben and I see this rather often with people that have, especially even military people that have full pensions and are retired from the military, that is totally 100% earned. Like, and I have no issues. I mean, they should. But man, I'll tell you what, you see these people that have the money coming in that doesn't really require anything. It does a number on people.
Oh, absolutely.
It
has nothing to do whether it's earned or not. It's just like you got to have some place to be or someone to.
You have to have some sort of purpose. Yeah, like in your purpose.
Day. Yeah, like because I would just be up till 4 a.m. and be up like it was just a disaster.
I wanted to ask too, and maybe have you elaborate if you could a little bit. You touched a little bit on anxiety, like anabolics and anxiety, and I think you were hitting at the fact that like your weed intake increased as a result of that.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Yeah,
I'm glad we're kind of talking about this too, because ironically we haven't released the episode yet, but it's going to be the one that comes out right before. We actually know a gentleman who runs a HRT clinic, and we were kind of touching on some of this stuff to, give some education on it, some of the possible side effects. And, drug addicts, alcoholics tend to have heightened anxiety already. So it kind of tends to exacerbate a lot of addiction issues too.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll go as far as if your testosterone is low, you'll also have anxiety, right? Any imbalances you create in your body will have anxiety. Like pretty much it usually results in that. But when I would take testosterone, I didn't feel like the world was gonna, against me. But as I remember the first time I tried Trenbolone, I made it like 5 or 6 days and I was like, I can't do it. And I just had to come off. Like I couldn't sleep. I was just a wreck. And so when I took it again, I was smoking. And so I was like, okay, this is how you handle it. And so go on. What were you
That
saying?
sounds about right with addiction. You know, it's kind of funny. It goes
Yeah.
hand in hand. Here's a
Right.
side effect. Let me take this to counteract that.
It's putting
And then
out fires, you know, it's
snowball.
yeah, it's so, oh my God. So yeah, and I think Trenbolone especially is known for that. And I tell people all the time, like, don't take it. Don't do it. Like, it has a time and a place. Like, if you're going to compete, like I was trying to win USAs, right? And when you're trying to like shoot for a goal like that, you're like, whatever it takes, right? I'm gonna deal with it. But if you're just trying to look jacked and sexy or whatever, like, don't do it. Like, you ruin your relationships or try to pick up all these other coping mechanisms, because it'll make you crazy. And it is literally, it's funny, but it's not. The amount of guys that I will say that and they'll be like, oh, it doesn't affect me like that. And you can just see it affecting them. Like, they're being insane. And their girl will be like writing, like, I've gotten messages, you know, from, they're like, he's acting so crazy, I don't know what to do. You know, it's like, and they're like, I'm fine. It's just a constant trend, because you don't really know. And every girl that I dated when I was taking trend, they always knew a few days in. And I'm a really calm person. Like, I don't blow up at people, but it would change me. And they would always be like, you started trend again, didn't you? And I'd be like, yeah, you knew. You know, it'd be like 3 or 4 days in and they could tell right away. So
What is it? What is it about trend that does that? Like, is it just like your hormones or what?
I mean, it's not for people, you know, like it's for cattle. Like, it's,
oh, is it?
yeah. So you know what FINA is? They put it in the bull's ear and it makes them like really beefy for slaughter.
Oh, wow. No, I didn't know that.
So Trenbolone is FINA pellets mashed and cooked and made into oil to you inject in your body.
Oh my gosh.
So like it works the best out of everything. Like, it makes guys look exactly how they idealize themselves looking. Like, and that's the problem, because it works so good. And like every show that I did really well in, I was taking a considerable amount of Trenbolone. Other than when I was like a teenager, right? But like every other show, I absolutely used it. But like, if you're not competing, like, I would always tell people, like, don't do that. Like, it's crazy. I mean, it's not worth rolling the dice on the things you have going on in your life. That's my opinion.
I'm glad we're talking about this, because we brought this up for a moment on the previous episode, where it's like, with social media, there's this phenomenon now. Like, you've probably seen, like, on YouTube, there's these kids called the Trend Twins.
Yeah.
And they glorify this stuff to the point where, you know, I see young guys in the gym that are hurting themselves at 18 years old. Some of them are still in high school and they're doing this stuff. And they don't realize they're poisoning their bodies, and the consequence.
Even if it's not your body, it's, you know, you lose it. I mean, your brain isn't even fully developed, and you're putting all these, you know, these bull drugs in your body. Like, it's not good. I mean, I've seen studies that show that it creates long-term changes in your brain, like that can link to like Alzheimer's. Like, it's very bad. It's very bad for your mind, you know? So like, I'm not saying, you know, if you're a pro bodybuilder, like, yeah, you're probably going to use some of it, but I always tell people, like, if you cannot use it, like, don't. It's not.
Well, in your situation specifically, your livelihood, your income was attached to you producing in these shows. And with that comes a level of risk that, you know, it's just like professional football players, you know, these people that take, you know, professional, you know, sponsored power lifters and stuff. You know, you're undertaking a level of risk.
Fighters.
Fighters, you know, all these people, like, you understand going in, there's a level of risk here, but the reward is I get paid. And you got these
maybe.
If you're lucky, you get paid. But yeah, I don't understand. I mean, I really don't. I don't understand what, but what I think it, when, Ben, you referenced the people on YouTube and stuff like that, the trend twins, and we see these young people going down this path. It's all, I think, anchored in one thing. And you touched on this in the beginning: feeling inadequate, feeling, not a part of, feeling, just this emptiness feeling. And, especially in today's day, social media, you go on and you see these kids that are totally yoked and they're like, oh, I'm taking trenbolone. And then it's
You
just,
don't feel the rest of what comes with it, though.
yeah.
I mean, I hate using it. I hate it. I love how it makes me look, but I hate just the feeling of like this. It's like this almost like paranoia that everything is like the walls are closing in on you all the time.
Yeah.
Just for a bunch of reasons. But do you want me to go back to the timeline?
Yeah. Sorry, we got kind of sidetracked.
I think I was really at the low point there, and I got offered a job and a contract in South Florida. So I moved. That was when I sold this ring and I took the money and I moved. And I was really, I was struggling. But it was like a fresh start, but I was very lonely. I knew people from work, and the people were nice to me. It's not like people were like this, people tried to, be my friend. But I think I was just, I was really messed up from everything that had happened. And I think I was really messed up from the girl I was dating. Like, she had been the first girl that I was like serious about, that I was like, I'm going to marry her, And I think it was probably like the whole thing. And, looking back on it now, it's silly. And there's a lot of reasons I was like, why would you think that, but at the time I was just a wreck. And I'll leave some of it out, but I did the Arnold. At this time, I'm taking Kratom like daily too. I'll throw that in there.
What made you start taking the Kratom again, or did we touch
Probably
on it?
just desperation to not feel like I wanted to die. I was so depressed. And
how'd you find it, or were you introduced to it?
I've just always been kind of a nerd about finding drugs on the internet, I guess.
It's the same way you found heroin. Just find it.
Fair enough.
Find it. I mean, but I think it intrigued me, and it wasn't as popular in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this sounds cool. And I remember ordering some from this website called Mood and Mind. And, I would I had a spoon and I would just and like wash it down. And I was like, wow, this makes me not feel so bad anymore. But I liked the fact that I didn't feel like high, like THC, like it's very different, right? I felt functional, but I didn't feel like I wanted to take my life, like sad. And so that, I think that, if I'm being honest, it may have kept me from doing like we were talking about, something bad, right? Like it was a antidepressant for me at that time. So I'm living in South Florida, so I do the Arnold, and I got fourth there instead of third. Didn't look quite as good. I think probably everything that was happening.
How old are you at this time?
25, 20.
Yeah.
25. No. 24. 26, I think. Yeah.
Okay. 10 years ago, roughly 11 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I had some other drama, relationship stuff happen, and I was a wreck. And I remember someone in the office gave me tianeptine sodium, and they're like, this is great. I remember so vividly, they said, this stuff is great. It's like painkillers with none of the bad parts. And I was like, go ahead.
Can you elaborate on what that is and some of the nicknames for it? Because this
Yeah.
one doesn't come up a lot, and I'm glad this is coming up because I think it was what, Tom, a month and a half ago? No, maybe it's been 2 or 3 months. I put a gentleman into detox for tianeptine.
It's pretty brutal. I'll tell you that. I mean, like, but so, I mean, it was originally marketed as a fast acting like SSRI for manic depression. And it was sold in little tablets called Stablon. There were 12.5 milligrams. And that number is important because we had these little, there was a website, I think it was called New Mind, and it sold chemicals, for lack of a better term, for research. And that was, you could order it from there. I remember they would overnight it, which was good when you ran out. I would be like paying for it to be overnighted to my apartment, staying up, not being able to eat or anything. And yeah, it was in these tubs, and they were like, the tubs were at least, I think starting out, the tubs were like 5 grams, right? And when it was given to me, I didn't know how to dose it. They were just like, take 3 of these little scoops or whatever, right? And but it's a terrible thing because in 12.5 milligrams, it's a different drug than it is when you start taking like a gram plus. When it's a gram plus, you get this serotonin blast. It's a painkiller. It's opioid. And it's like a tricycline antidepressant. It does all these things. So when you're going into withdrawal, it's like you're withdrawing from a cocktail of drugs. It's not just like I'm withdrawing from oxycodone. Like it's like so many things are under attack. It's really wild. And the drug has a half-life of like 90 minutes, especially when you're really addicted to it. So, I mean, when I was first it was given to me, it made me, obviously I felt better. I was like, oh, I'm not stressed out anymore. And, so I would just take it. I didn't know. And I mean, it sounds stupid because, there's no such thing as a free ride, right? Like obviously you're going to have to pay. But I didn't realize until I ran out one weekend. And I remember I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. And I couldn't even leave my apartment. I was just so like bugged out. I was like, this is crazy. Like, I am so addicted to this now. And it was the reality of like, oops, and like, I'm in too deep now. Like, to stop will be a crisis. Like, for me to quit, I'm going to have to stop working and stop training because I was still competing. Everything's going to have to be turned off for a while for me to stop this. And so I was like, well, I can't do that yet. And I'm trying to think of when this is. It's like summertime, I think. And so, the amount I'm using continues to increase to the point where at near the end, I would just take the 5-gram tub and that was a dose for me, which is, I've never seen anywhere on the internet anyone say that. Like, it's a lot. So like when I quit, I was probably using at least 30 grams a day.
That's too, for the listeners. I've seen the media called it this. I've never actually heard this on the street, but they say that the street names for this stuff are gas station heroin. I've heard it called Zaza.
Yeah, these are the different brands they sell, like King Neptune or something. I don't know. I've seen the little things, but see those. If you're buying those, it's dosed low. So yeah, it's still dangerous, but you're not going to end up like me just slamming 5 grams to the face, right? Because like I had just these tubs of it raw.
Is that because within the supplement world you have access to raw, I don't know, materials, if you will?
I mean, anyone could have bought this.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, sure, but anyone could have bought this. And it's just that, your tolerance goes up. like you're dosing every 90 minutes, like, so you keep needing more. And the withdrawal, like, because the half-life is so short, you would get up at least once in the middle of the night to redose. Like you would never make it through the night. You know, you'd always wake up like bugging out, and you'd have to take more and then go back to bed. But so I, in it, to kind of round this back to somewhere, I was going to do the New York Pro. I'm trying to remember if this is before or after the tianeptine, but I tore a tendon in my forearm. So I was like in a thing, like I couldn't use the forearm. It was just like another thing, you know, for my mental health to deal with. And I was just super low. So now I'm addicted to this, like heavily addicted to the tianeptine. And I was like, I'm going to do a show, you know, it's like, I'm going to do it. I've always been able to turn around and like rip it together you know, at the 11th hour, I'm going to do it again. And so I decided I was going to do the San Antonio Pro. This is in 2015. And I prepped like 2.5 weeks, well addicted to this. I mean, I was a wreck. And I remember I was just starving. I would just starve myself. I think, you know, it was like a drug addict prep. Like it was not well done in any way. I think I would eat like a Quest bar for dinner or something crazy like that. But I mean, like I looked good. I'd been training all year. I came down in weight, and I was obviously not in the best shape I'd ever been in. But I remember going there and just a wreck. And I weighed in the night before. I was used to 212, and I was like 221. And the guy with me was like, "Oh," he's like, just let's not do it. He's like, "Just don't." I was like, "No." He was like, "I'm gonna," you know. So I remember taking like, I think I took, which is insane and is incredibly foolish. I think I took like 6 diazides or something crazy that night, and I peed out like 12 pounds, and I looked good, which is crazy because normally you'd look terrible, and I looked pretty. I got second place at that show, the pro show, and but that was almost not good because that kind of told me like, see, you can just like fuck around and like it's gonna be fine. Like you don't have to be on this straight and narrow. Like you could just kind of like move the pieces at the end and it'll come together. And so I was like, I'm gonna do the Olympia, and everyone around me was like, Aaron, don't do the Olympia. Like you're really in a bad spot right now. Like you did that show, good. Like time to take care of some things. But I wouldn't listen. And I thought it would be the same, like just like the other one. So I went and I did the Olympia, and I just like, I think I took Lasix or something, and there was like a long period between weigh-in and the show, and I probably looked good somewhere in between there, and then just toast. And I told the people, you know, in Florida, I was like, I'm going to do the Olympia, and after I do the Olympia, I'm going to go back to Virginia and check into outpatient to stop the tianeptine. I think I bought before the Olympics, I think I bought like $700 worth of tianeptine just to like get me to the end. So I think I was probably taking at least $125 a day of tianeptine at one point. Yeah. So do the Olympia, go home, go to this outpatient place. And like you said, like tianeptine isn't a regular drug that, you know, it's kind of like a weird research chemical. So especially at that time, they were like, I don't really know what to do with you. But they put me on Suboxone and Klonopin. And I remember it, even on, this is how, I mean, and keep in mind, like I was taking a massive amount of tianeptine, like I just told you, 8 milligrams of Suboxone, and it was like 2 milligrams of Klonopin didn't do shit for me. And I remember someone else, and I mean, this is bad, but I was taking just to get about 4 hours of sleep. And I would wake up out of that 4 hours of sleep, like drenched in sweat still. I would take the 8 milligrams of Suboxone, 2 milligrams of Klonopin, and 4 bars of Xanax, all to just be able to just turn off for like a few hours. Like, so that's, how strong the tianeptine withdrawal was. Like all that stuff was not even, taking me out of withdrawal. So, that, and I'm like, this is just going to be like a month and I'll just taper off of this stuff and I'll go back to Florida. No big deal. And obviously it wasn't that easy. Like, I think I tapered down from 8 milligrams of Suboxone down to like 2. And then I was like, oh, I can't do it. I was super discouraged, but in hindsight, like they should have just be like, yeah, get off that last 2 now. That's what they should have done. They're like, it's fine. There's no rush. Take your time. And so I think I was on that too for over another year. And the Klonopin. And in that time frame, I also started taking Finabut. And I don't even know why I would do that. Like I just had the tianeptine thing. So it's insane to think about. But I think there's a point in my life when I was really, I think is not really addicted to like a substance per se, but just addicted to the feeling of getting like intoxicated. Like I wanted to just.
For the listeners too, Phenibut, that's another like offshoot random substance also that's not mainstream. Again, you can get that stuff in Florida. And it's something like as a substance abuse treatment center, we have to keep an eye out for that stuff. To my knowledge, there's no like drug test for it. But, we do like regular house searches because this is stuff like, it's random. A drug addict can go find anything to get outside of themselves.
I mean, it's very similar to Seroquel or gabapentin, So, and I mean, I was taking so much of it. I think I would wait. I don't know if you have any idea of the dosing of Finabut.
No, I don't.
No. Normally you would take maybe a couple grams is a good dose. Like 2 grams is like, and at one point I was waking up in the morning and taking 10 grams, which I later on found was the LD50 of supposed to be a Finabut. Later on I had blood work done and my liver was just my enzymes were through the roof from it. But that just added a whole nother thing that eventually I had to taper off of. So, fast forward the Suboxone, the Klonopin. Eventually, I'm like, I'm going to get off the Suboxone. I did use Kratom to taper off of the Suboxone. And that was really hard. I remember when I would go in the gym, all my limbs I couldn't lift any free weights for the longest time. When I would lift anything, I could only do machines because I would just shake uncontrollably after I got off Suboxone. And so, that's done. Eventually I taper off the Finabut and I'm just on the Klonopin. And I think it was a summer, like I had been dating this girl. We broke up. That summer I got a little off the rails again. And I remember going to the Olympia and I was at the booth for the company I was with. And I think in the past, when I would live in Florida, we would go party and stuff. People always thought it was funny, like that I did a lot of drugs. It would be like, oh, Aaron is like expert at being fucked up in public or something. Like it was cool, and they sent me home from the booth and I was so confused. I was like, what? Because before it seemed like we were all partying together. And I, apparently I had taken it too far. And I just looked like a mess. And so I was like, oh, all right. So try to clean up my act a little bit. And this is 2000. Oh boy, I think this is 2017 at this point. So, so somewhere along that time, this was a bad thing for me. Is the doctor who had been prescribing me the Klonopin dropped dead. And obviously, if you have any history of addiction, like people don't want to prescribe you benzodiazepines, or people don't. You have to jump through some hoops. You should have to jump through some hoops to get them prescribed to you. And so I couldn't get them prescribed to me. And so obviously, like we talked about, you can find anything on the internet. So I just started buying liquid benzodiazepines on the internet, which would be like Clonzolam, Flugrozolam. There's all these ones, and they're all really strong, but they're liquid, and then you just have as much as you want in these bottles, right? Which is super bad. So despite that, after that experience where they sent me home, I was like, all right, I need to kind of reel it in. And I did. And then it's just kind of weird stuff. So I met my ex-wife at that time. And when I say these things, I want to be clear, like nothing about any of this is anyone else's. This is obviously it's my responsibility, And when you meet people and you recognize that maybe something about them or something, is causing you to maybe, or even just, if you're all of a sudden see yourself starting to use more again, like it's a red flag, like you need to change something, right? And I think that there was a lot of issues going on in her life. And I think I was not in a great place, and I had just kind of tapered down off of all these things. And I think I felt just this weird pressure to be like calm and collected. And so then I started taking way more again. And then that created a real weird dynamic in the relationship, because now I was like this, I was checked out all the time on, taking tons of benzodiazepines. So that leads us into 2018. And this is an interesting, so just like in the past, I was like, well, I'll compete. Like, it seems like I always can kind of whip it together and do it, despite, if my life is in shambles or not. So I decided to do the Indie Pro, and I, these 3 weeks were really humiliating for me, because I think, and as we all know, when you're really in deep, addicted, you're not very self-aware of what you're putting out into the world. At least I wasn't. And I thought it was fine. And I went to these shows and people were just horrified. And I remember seeing posts, videos, and everything after, being like, what is wrong with Aaron Clark? All these threads, all these things. And I looked terrible too. I didn't look good. And that was the Indie Pro. And I was like, oh, well, I'll pull it together for the New York Pro. I'll do New York. Same thing. And I remember, I think there's this thing in hindsight, I could see people talking to me and looking at me and just being like, oh, this guy is just messed up, And it's sad. And I think at the time I didn't register. And I remember they escorted me out of the venue and then laid hands on me and prayed for me. And I was so pissed at the time. I was like, the hell is this people's their problem, but obviously I was a wreck, and everybody could tell, except for me. But in that time, I thoroughly embarrassed myself. And then there was the internet took it and ran with it. And I remember there was some Facebook group, bodybuilding. and there was a thread about it. And I remember a guy who I consider to be like, what about my best friend, but one of my best friends, he just got in there and he just threw me under the bus. And he was like, yeah, like he's just a hopelessness. He said, we all tried to help him, but he won't hear of it. And none of that was true. None of it was true. And he made up a bunch of things about me too and wrote it all on there because he knew that no one was going to listen to me at that time. Like my credibility was zero. So, he could say whatever and everyone would buy it. So yeah, I just had a field day, just dragging my name through the mud. And I remember just reading and being like, damn, that's crazy. Like, I thought they were my friends, And I think it was really eye-opening to me. And obviously some people were still my friends, but it was like how many people I had attracted into my life that when I had become rapidly successful in bodybuilding, they wanted to be my friend just because it looked cool to be my friend, and the second that I was, down, they wanted to kick me in the ribs with everybody else. Because it was embarrassing or whatever. Right. And, I think that in general, like it's something that I've carried with me since then. It gives you a real interesting perspective on people. If you like in a certain thing, you become like rapidly one of the best and you see all these people kind of come into your life and it gives you this insight and like, man, like people don't care about you. Obviously I'm not speaking about everybody, but it's like how fickle people are and how shallow the majority of our friends really are. And, so yeah, I mean, again, like I felt really embarrassed and alone and just kind of like, oof, like I knew I messed up. And so I moved to Panama City Beach with my girlfriend at the time, and we started a painting business. Totally out of the, not something I had any experience doing.
Like painting houses?
Yeah, like properties, rental properties and stuff.
Gotcha.
And I was probably there, I want to say maybe 6 months, not that long. And so, and then we moved here in 2018. And at that point, I think it was the beginning of 2019 where my ex-wife gave me an ultimatum of like, you need to stop taking these benzodiazepines because when I would run out of them, it would be an exponential crisis. Like I would be just like locked in a room dying, like, and so, which I'm grateful that was the case because I did get me to stop, I quit them.
So this was kind of like the beginning of the end.
What how
With
so?
the like, it sounds like you're starting to hit rock bottom here.
Well, I think rock bottom was further back maybe, but so like this point,
Fair enough.
I'm yeah, there's a long point that's maybe rock bottom.
All right.
But she was just like, I can't keep this, which is perfectly logical. Like it's very stressful to be with anybody that's having this, like, I ran out of this thing. Sorry, I need to go lock myself away for the next couple of days. Like, that's crazy. And so that was just my life at the time, because I mean, I'm sure you guys know, like if you're taking grams and grams of benzodiazepines a day and you run out, like you are in a crisis. Like you can die, like your body is shutting down. You can't do anything. I remember when it happened, like I would sit in a chair and I would just be like, they're going to have to put me in a mental health. Like I really thought that my brain was broken and would never be the same. And I think that of all the things that I have taken and quit, benzodiazepines are the worst thing because it's your mind. It's like if you've taken it for years, your brain doesn't know how to process anxiety anymore because it's like a computer. Every time it pops up, like, would you like to, install this update? And you're like, not now, not like every time you've had anxiety, you're just like, nope. You just put it out with the drug, right? So it's like you have no idea how to handle it. So it's like there's the physical withdrawal, and then the mental, like it's like you have to relearn how to process everything. You can't look people in the eye. Like I couldn't look people in the eye for months. Like it was just, I don't even know if it still, affects me or not, but like it that plagued me for months, like it was not like, well, the withdrawals are going to last, 6 weeks. It was like, just, it kept on going, so after that, I mean, I would say that, I've stayed pretty stable, and like I told you before, I still do use the Kratom. And I got divorced in 2021. And, I think that I've learned a lot of things the hard way, and I'm careful because I know that I think I feel grateful that I'm here. I feel like, not everybody gets a second and a third and a fourth chance. And I think the older you get, you're like, I might not have any more chances. Like if you fuck up again, like who knows? It's like, you can't do that. And then, for me, like that's been enough to keep me from doing anything, like inviting any new vices like that into my life. And for a while it felt like I was almost looking for them. And I don't know if it's just a mindset shift or if it's just that I had a lot of time alone to think about who I am and just kind of like internalize some things or accept some things, because I've noticed that there were years in my life that I just craved this, like it's escapism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've even, like I have used a benzo since then, but I just took one on a Saturday and I didn't care. Like I didn't want to take it again, and I know that's wrong. I would obviously never encourage anyone to do that, but I'm saying that as like, I think that there's something that clicked of like, I don't want to live in this fog anymore of like running from, it's like you can't keep doing it. Like you can't.
I was
And
talking to a guy today about that. I was running group, and a guy just happened to stumble upon us that had 13 years of sobriety, and I was kind of, telling him, I'm like, I just ran out of energy.
oh
I
yeah,
don't have the energy to go back out today, live the lifestyle like I was doing. It's
yeah,
it's more than a full-time job staying high on these substances, and not to mention you're run down trying to do it. I couldn't hang anymore like I did when I was younger.
yeah. I think I feel a lot of guilt too,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that that's one reason why, like I've talked about, like I used to enjoy marijuana a lot. And now if I have any THC, because there's been a couple of times where I've been in Vegas or something, and someone will give me a gummy or something, and it's a terrible time for me. I become overwhelmed with this feeling of like, Aaron, it's like, what are you doing? Like we thought we were past this. Like you're 35. Like what are you doing? And I can't handle it. Like it's almost like I don't want to use the word spiritual, but just this heavy feeling of like, you're not supposed to be doing this right now. And it's like, and people are like, oh, that's too bad. I'm like, well, no, it's not too bad. I'm kind of glad, like, because it's not really going to serve me anyways. But I think it's just, and maybe it's just getting older and it changes perspective of like what matters. And I think that, when I was younger, there was something like like sexy about like doing drugs all the time, being the guy who's like always fucked up. Like, it's like, it's not like, you know, the older you get, like that is the least sexy thing.
Well,
You know?
you said earlier, what I picked up on is that it was like part of your identity.
It was for
You
sure.
know?
It was, you know, and you create this. Yeah, I think that I always, you know, like I touched on my childhood, I was shy, right, and quiet, and I think that I always wanted to be fun and funny, and you know, especially I think about, you know, certain relationships I had, and I wanted to be fun and funny, and I wanted to like give that person like just be like a party all the time, you know, and no one was putting that pressure on me but myself. But it was just kind of like you said, it's like part of your identity of just being this like character, you know, that you have in your head. So yeah, I mean, like I said, a lot of it is an identity shift of
Yeah.
if that's not, you
Aaron,
can't.
I want to jump in here. I just have a couple more questions and then we got to wrap this up. But so given where you're at now in the bodybuilding world, are you still as involved as you were before? Or are you like what does that look? I know you said before we started recording that you're doing like online training and stuff like that. And have you ever been approached like through any of maybe your clients and stuff that you train? Do they approach you and ask you like, hey, I want to go down this road? And if so, like, what do you say to them?
um well, it's kind of a multiple part question. I'll start.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, no, it's fine. Um, am I as involved? No, I think that I struggle with if I want to continue to compete on the stage, and I think that there's multiple reasons for that. The big one being, it's like if you were really successful at one time, and they've had some small injuries, and I could still look really good, but like, can I beat that?
Yeah.
Like, if I can't, then like, what? Why? Like, you know, like in my mind, it's always better to step away before you come back. People are like, why'd you come back? You know, like, uh,
Yeah.
and it's just, I mean, like, bodybuilding has given things to me and taken a lot from me. And I think at this point in my life, I recognize that the act of competing doesn't give you anything back unless you really, in your heart and soul, like you want to be like that title or that, you know, status means your life, you know, you're willing to give it all for that. Like, why, you know, why are you doing it? And at first time people, I understand it's like, it's a thought in their head, right? Like, well, I wonder what it's like. I wonder if I like, okay, we'll do one, you know, do a show. That's fine. But I, when anyone asks me about competing, I always ask them like, why do you want to do this? You know, because it is
Yeah.
inherently like a really toxic mindset. Like it, you know, like I said before, like I think I was good at it because I had a disorder. And to go
Right.
further into this, I mean, um, my little sister passed away this year from anorexia, you know, and so
Mm,
I've been around eating disorders my whole life. And I see like how serious it really is and how it just takes people's souls away, you know? I mean, just like drugs, it's a similar, obviously it's different, but it's similar, right? It's a mental disease in a sense. And like you see bodybuilding get inside of people's like it can really mess with people. And
yeah.
there are certain people that I would be like, I don't think you should do this, you know, or like, why do you want to do this? Because like I understand some people have to get the monkey off their back and do a thing once, but it's really inherently I see it being negative for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean for everyone. And I don't mean bodybuilding like lifting weights and trying to get lean and jacked. I mean like bodybuilding to win shows.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, and not to make this about, you know, sexes or especially girls. I mean, it's sad. I mean, like starving and it's like I said, I've been around it my whole life, and it's just the line between the two is so fine that it's like you're playing with just mental disorders, you know.
Right.
It's interesting to hear that perspective because people ask me all the time, why do you do it?
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't even know that I have that answer. But Tom and I, we talk about this all the time. We talk about it, my case with Dr. T. And like,
Yeah.
I started doing this and I had 12 years of sobriety, something
Right.
like that. And, have done a lot of work on myself and the health. But if I had to, I could step away from it. I don't want to right now.
Yeah.
I'm having fun
Yeah.
still. But yeah, it's because I tell our clients all the time, man, we get our clients here and they're like, oh, what's your diet look like? How often are you lifting? Show me what you do. And I'm just like, no, dude, work on your sobriety first.
Yeah.
You have no idea like the groundwork that I've done on myself from a mental health perspective
Right.
before getting into this. And right now I'm still having fun with it. I enjoy it. I love the lifestyle, but
Well, I will
there,
always live the lifestyle. Like I get
yeah.
up at 4 in the morning every morning to train. And I will always train as if I am competing, you know, like to the
Mhm.
best of my ability. And I'll do that till the wheels fall off or I die. Like that's like you talk part of your identity, like it's part of me and part of what keeps me together. I don't want to stop. There's never a day where I'm like, maybe not this morning. Like it's just like brushing my teeth at this point. It's like, no, you're going to go. You're going to
Yeah.
go train.
It serves you. It serves you at this stage of your life versus taken away from you.
Yeah, it's part of my day,
Yeah.
And I'll always, I'm probably in the 220s right now, 5'7" short guy. So like, yeah, I stay big, like, but I competed in the 212, so I was never like 280 or anything, like, but I just kind of maintain this kind of level, and I'm not sure what I want to do with it beyond there.
Yeah. What kind of clients do you take on in terms of like your online coaching and stuff like that? Like who's your ideal client?
Well, I mean, my specialty from my own experience is obviously males trying to lose fat and put on muscle, right? But I've worked, bodybuilders and competitors, but I've also worked with like anybody you could think of in gyms, like pregnant women, elderly people, people with injuries. Like so, like I've worked with a lot of people, but my own personal experience, right? I've been a guinea pig for 15 years to like doing all this stuff. So what is my own experience is, building muscle, losing body fat, the hormones, all that stuff, right? That's what I have a lot of personal experience in.
Yeah.
Diet. Yeah.
Well, that was fun. I appreciate you sharing all that. You threw me for a loop at the end. I'm really sorry to hear about your sister. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. I probably should have mentioned that at the beginning, but I, just to kind of, I say that just to kind of drive home the, like, I know like how serious that is,
Yeah.
because I have experienced some of it myself. And then I watched somebody from the age of 11 to 32 just be in and out of rehabilitation, till it eventually
Yeah.
got the best of them. And, it's, that's why I say like, and in bodybuilding, I think when you are aware of the, substance and eating disorders, you're very aware of like how close it is to those things,
Right.
or how vulnerable you are to those things when you practice it at a high level, right? And I just think that's not to deter people away from it, but people should be aware of that,
Sure.
you know, just to check themselves or maybe get some accountability for themselves, or one of the two, right? Yeah.
Check your motives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
Well,
there was a lot there. I appreciate you coming on, Aaron, from the, touching on the synthetics, the eating disorder stuff, the I like how you tied in all the mental and going through all that, because it's all interconnected and interwoven.
For sure. Yeah.
It really is.
Yep. It is.
Awesome. Ben, any final thoughts?
No, just thank you for coming on. I feel like I'll stay in touch with you, my man, if you don't mind.
Oh,
You know?
absolutely.
Yeah, like I said, I love your content, so I'm gonna
Thanks.
keep watching that.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out too.
All right.
And Aaron, what I'll do is I'll follow you on Instagram and then send you some stuff when this goes out. You can
Very cool.
if you want, repost it or whatever.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome, dude. Thanks, man. And we'll hopefully stay in touch and we'll talk soon.
Absolutely, guys.
All
Have
right,
a great
brother.
day.
Take care.
Have a blessed day, Aaron. Thank you, sir.
See you guys.
Bye.